What's up, everyone? The stock market is back at a crucial level, and we are just a couple points away from a new low this year. The stock market got destroyed last week, and there's some big things we need to talk about heading into this week. We have some decent news with Russia and Ukraine, some earnings plays, Cathie Wood, and a couple other things you want to know about. So stick with us to the end. But Tom, we're not going to waste any time, so let's get right into it.
Yeah, Mike, as we all know, the stock market started falling down last week. There was some big stuff that came out with the FOMC event, of course, and the market did not take that very well, and the SPY started dipping back down. And guys, we are approaching a huge support on the SPY. This is the SPY's daily chart right here, and you can see that back in June, we hit a low really close to 362. So as we start to approach 362, I'm going to really watch the SPY very carefully for a potential support bounce back to the upside. We've been going pretty much straight down, Mike, ever since August 16th. Now, I'm not saying that this support can't get broken. I still think the market has a lot of momentum down and it could break this to the downside, but I will be watching it this week. If we do see a bounce there, it might not be a bad play to the upside, maybe for just a couple days, given how much selling pressure has been coming in. But that is a huge 362 support, so I figured I'd say that for you guys. And also the heat map on Friday was just terrible. We had tons of stocks in the red. Almost none of the tech stocks ended up green, which is terrible. The only thing I see green that's actually notable on the chart is really like Home Depot and Dollar General. So it was a pretty bad week, Mike, and the FOMC event might carry over into this week as far as momentum goes.
Yeah, we'll have to see. And another key thing that we want to keep in mind are these types of fake outs that we see sometimes in these types of market environments. For example, if we look at the SPY on a daily chart, the low of the year is around 362.17, right? Sometimes, we might see a break below that and it might fall by, let's say, 50 cents or a dollar, and then that ends up being the new low. And a lot of people say, oh, new low, let's short the market, let's buy puts, blah, 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 blah. And the next thing you know, the stock market is just blasting up the next week. So while we're looking at these key levels, it is very important to give these levels just a little bit of wiggle room, especially in a time where the market is very volatile.
Yeah, that's a really good point because as we know, it can always fluctuate by a couple dollars. So that's a really good point, Mike. And I would say it looks pretty good here, like right down here around 362. Maybe if we fall under 362 a little bit and then we confirm back up into it and then fall back down, maybe that would be the way to go, is wait for a nice confirmation or something like that. I think that would be a really good way to possibly trade the market this week. But Mike, let's say the market does pop up. Do you have any stocks that you've been seeing that are super low right now that might end up, getting some good momentum back to the upside if we do see that support bounce? I know there's been a few lately, like Meta, Zoom, and stocks like that.
Yeah, you kind of stole it from me, Tom. But yeah, Meta's the main one. This is a company that I own for the long term. I think it has a ton of great potential. But at the same time, the stock has been absolutely obliterated this year. And they're actually doing pretty well fundamentally. Of course, growth is slowing, which is just inevitable once you get to the size that they are at. But I feel like for multiple reasons, they are good right now, not only for the long term, but, like you suggested, let's say the market cools off. Meta, it's not like they don't move. They actually have some really big moves, and that does present a lot of opportunity for even day trades or short-term swings. So out of all of them, I would say Meta is the top one on my watch list.
Yeah, and look at that. We're actually approaching a huge support on Meta as well from all the way back in March of 2020, which is that COVID low. We're kind of retesting those COVID lows. So I'll really be watching that for a nice support bounce with the market. If we do see some good momentum on the SPY this week, I think some of these stocks could end up popping up. And Mike, one of my favorite sectors this week is actually going to be the cruise line and airline sector. I know last week it was actually doing okay in the middle of the week. We did see some crazy volatility to the downside. But what I will say is that CCL on that daily chart is also now right on that COVID low again. So just watch some of these stocks, guys. We're right on support. But of course, always be careful of that big break down below. I will say, Mike, with all these stocks at support and all the negative news going on, I am getting a little bit worried about kind of like a bigger sell-off here, especially like when you look at the SPY on a max daily chart. It just looks like there's a lot of room to the downside. I've been kind of giving some crazy price targets lately. Like I feel like we could possibly hit 340 or even 320 over the next few months. I know a lot of people think that might be crazy, but looking at the chart, if we start breaking some of these key supports this week, it won't be good.
Yeah. And a couple minutes ago, you mentioned CCL, which actually has earnings this week. So what does the calendar look like?
Yeah, that's actually why I talked about them. So yeah, they have earnings on Friday, which is going to be pretty big. I feel like heading up into those earnings, they might get some like pre-earnings run up or something like that going on. But the biggest day this week is going to be Thursday. We're going to have Bed Bath and Beyond before open, and then after close is going to be Micron and Nike. Now it's not the biggest earnings week. It's kind of like the past few weeks, how there's only a few key companies reporting. But nonetheless, Micron and Nike will be huge on Thursday after close. And I also noticed, Mike, that BlackBerry reports Tuesday after close, which I know BlackBerry can get some good hype every once in a while, too.
Good stuff. Alrighty. So yeah, that's the earnings calendar for this week. Feel free to screenshot it for later. But Tom, what else do we need to know about?
Yeah, so that's the earnings calendar, but we do have some pretty big economic data events, of course, coming up as well. So the first thing I wanted to talk about this week is that we're going to get a ton of speeches this week from some of the Fed leaders. So you can see right here, 9:55 a.m. on Tuesday, Bullard's going to speak. Daly's going to speak at 8:35 p.m. Tuesday. Then there's just going to be a lot of Fed speakers this week. Like Bullard's then going to speak again Wednesday. So there's going to be a lot of stuff going on as far as Fed speeches go. We're going to get some durable good orders, new home sales numbers on Tuesday morning. So watch out for those. That'll be good for the housing market. But one of the biggest things I saw this week, Mike, is that on Friday, the Eurozone is actually going to be reporting their CPI data, which is going to be very important. We're going to see their unemployment rate, their inflation rate year over year, month over month, and their core inflation rate. So it's going to be a big thing on Friday. And we have in the US personal spending and personal income numbers. So it's going to be a pretty big week, Mike, especially on Friday. Now, this is not going to be anything like it's not going to affect our markets the way that US CPI does, but I will say it should be pretty influential still.
Good stuff. Alrighty. And then I saw some more news lately with Cathie Wood. What's going on there?
Yeah, this is actually pretty insane. So as we know, ARKK and a lot of the ARK ETFs have been really falling off a lot lately. I mean, look at ARKK here from the high to the low. It had highs of like 160. Now we're sitting at $37. That is a huge drop. I will say it looks kind of like every other growth stock, but still definitely not what you want to see from a big ETF like that. And she's actually stepping back from two of the funds with ARK, which is very interesting. So William Scherer will be the new portfolio manager of the 3D printing ETF, PRNT, and the Israel Innovative Technology ETF, IZRL. He's been trading apparently, and he's been employed by them ever since 2014. So sounds like he might be pretty good, Mike. Hopefully he can do better than Cathie Wood right now, because if we look at her other ETFs, they've been pretty bad. Let's look at PRNT though, because that's kind of the ETF he's taking over. It has had highs of like $50 right around, and now it's making new lows right around 20. So hopefully he can help turn this one around, Mike. And I'm curious to see what he does over the next couple months as being the new portfolio manager. Like maybe he'll cut some of these companies, and I hope he reorganizes it pretty well.
Yeah, it's been a tough year, especially for ARK and many other stocks as well. So that's interesting. And then on the Ukraine/Russia side of things, of course, news updates happen every day, but what's going on there?
Yeah, it seems like, the news in Ukraine over the past few months has been really off and on. I remember at the beginning of the year, it was a lot more prevalent, and we kept seeing a lot more big headlines in the news. I feel like it's kind of faded down a little bit. But I know over the past week, Putin has been kind of threatening more nuclear action towards Ukraine. So I know Ukraine, Mike, has been actually pushing back against Russia. And I've been seeing reports that they've been actually pushing into Russian territory, which is very interesting. And it's making Putin obviously very angry. And I've heard that he's been mobilizing troops. He's been talking about obviously maybe going nuclear. So there's a lot of crazy stuff. Apparently, the Ukrainian president says that could actually be a reality, and that he might not be lying or bluffing about it. So sounds pretty scary, Mike. It's one of those black swan events that could possibly maybe throw a wrench into the markets this week. So I figured that's really worth mentioning, especially with Putin getting angry with Ukraine pushing into his territory now.
Yeah, well, pushing into the territory that he took, like they're
Yeah.
still originally Ukraine's. So yeah. Well, Tom, I think it's now time for the momentum plays. With the first one, we have BYND to the upside.
BYND. Yeah, look at that stock on the daily chart. Down a lot as well, but go ahead and make them break that double top right around 1586 tomorrow morning.
All right, with the next one, we have MU, also to the upside.
Yeah, hopefully they can get some momentum ahead of those earnings. Make them break above $50.30.
And with the last one, we have NVIDIA, but to the downside.
Oh, poor NVIDIA here. Go ahead and make them break down below 122.50.
Alrighty, so we're watching NVIDIA for potential day trade to the downside tomorrow, only if it breaks below the level Tom listed. And then we're watching MU and BYND for potential day trade to the upside tomorrow, only if they break above the levels Tom listed. Before we move on, we want to give a giant shout out to today's member of the day, which is PK Dog in the Stocked Up Discord. You've been in the chat for almost 2 months now. Definitely keep up your activity. It's awesome to have you in the chat. But besides that, Tom, do you have any favorite setups heading into tomorrow?
Yeah, so there's going to be a lot of, I think, interesting movement this week. I'm going to be really keeping my eyes on GLD and also on a lot of these oil stocks right now. So GLD actually had a big drop down on Friday as we continue to see the dollar rip to the upside. So it's very interesting to me how the dollar just keeps continuing to rip up with inflation and everything like that. It keeps sending GLD down, but I'm mentioning GLD here because if we do see possibly some crazy stuff come out of Russia or something like that, I feel like GLD could possibly start to maybe bounce back up. This ETF, Mike, or just gold in general, has been going straight down ever since like March 9th of this year. Just honestly, just straight down. And that was kind of right during the peak of all the bad Russia news at the time. So we might see a bounce back up if there is more Russian news that comes into the market. But other than that, Mike, I'm really going to be watching for those big support bounces that we talked about. And honestly, SPY is going to be the biggest thing I'm watching this week. I think that 362 support is so important, especially given that it's the big low of this year.
Alrighty, good stuff there. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. We post brand new videos every single day. Besides that, the market's at a crucial level, so it's definitely going to be a wild week. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let's have an awesome trading week.